I mean, I wanted to come here because I felt like where I was in the UK, there wasn't like that much for me. There is that aspect of it where at a certain stage in your life and you get the right opportunity, you grab it, the bull by the horns and make it your own.
Hi there, and welcome to Made It in Thailand, the podcast where we learn how to thrive in Thailand from top performers who have found success in the kingdom. I'm your host, Scott Pressimone. Today, I am speaking with Adam Porteous. Adam is going to share his journey from a small village in England to becoming the head of sales for a marketing agency in Bangkok. Without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today on Made It in Thailand. So how about we kick off by just a quick introduction, who you are, what you do, where you're from. Start it there.
Yeah, so my name's Adam Porteous, originally from a town in Cheshire in England, which is just south of Manchester. I'm 34 years old. I moved to Thailand about 4 to 5 years ago, and I currently work for a marketing agency called Pronto Marketing, and I'm the head of sales there.
Fantastic. So we've known each other for a few years now. I'm not too familiar with your background and, what you were doing before you came to Thailand. And can you kind of share a little bit more about that background?
Yeah, sure. I think the first time we met, you interviewed me, if I was correct, or at least you were a fly on the wall as other people were interviewing me until I got the role. But yeah, I moved to Thailand 4 to 5 years ago, having just spent around 6 to 9, maybe even a full year traveling around Southeast Asia and doing which I'll talk later about semi-entrepreneurial attempt. And yeah, where it all started in regards to, I guess, from a marketing perspective, was I used to do like journalism was where I initially started studying, and that sort of moved into them towards like more marketing and communications. With the nature of the job market after the financial crisis, you sort of just take whatever roles are available, and digital marketing and SEO and all these other things are basically the forefront of marketing now. Traditional and print was sort of dying out, which is why I pivoted from journalism sort of into like communications, things like this. And then from there, it evolved into doing different roles at different companies, both overseas and in the UK, freelance positions. And so, yeah, really like a passion for English and writing that pushed me towards marketing. Now I'm in a sales role. And again, I think with the way sales has even changed, that maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was a bit more, probably less consultative and more pushy and more direct. And now there's bigger like blurring of the lines between account management and sales and all these different types of facets, different industries and what these things entail. And so I always feel like having just expertise in a field can allow you to move into sales if you've got other attributes that align with basically being sales oriented or goal oriented.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The lines are blurring, and communication is one of those soft skills that you can kind of do anything with. And especially if you build up sales skills as you have, it's like that's probably the most empowering skill set to have because everyone has to sell either themselves or a product or service. And I think you've built up a skill set. I didn't know that it was all grounded in background in journalism though. So that kind of explains why you can also do stuff like copy and whatnot, and web copy and stuff. So I still want to get a better feel for your background. So the fact that you were studying journalism, I mean, did you know what you wanted to do back in your university days, or?
I feel like I had an idea of the like what you call it, sectors or types of expertise that I was interested in. Like I was a pretty decent student, a little bit mischievous, like it can all be, but I would get good grades. I was in the higher sets, but I definitely found things like science and maths more challenging. There was like Einstein's in this class, and I'd be the sort of person like looking out to write their homework, see if I can pinch an answer or understand how they figured something out. Whereas with English and other things, I felt like there was less shackles in a way from a creative standpoint. Obviously, creating how you can solve a problem, but objectively, there's like more of a science behind it. And I was always enjoyed reading. My mum and dad used to read a lot, and then I would pick up their books when we would go on holidays. And I think as I was younger, I always gravitated towards like the literacy. And then when I was at sixth form, which is different to how they do it in the States, you guys go to 18 and leave, whereas we go to 16 and we do what's called A levels, or it could be BTEC vocational, where you sort of specialize in 3 subjects. And then I sort of gamed the system because I knew English lit was going to be hard and English language was going to be hard. And lit was somewhat interesting, but loads of it was really like deep anthology type works. And then there was media studies, and I thought, oh, cool, this is going to be more like video and script writing and stuff. And it wasn't really, because the school was, I guess, not like a media specialist school. And so you'd be like watching things like Scream or something, and then, you know, doing a bit of an analysis on it. But it was a type of subject where you could get easier grades. So that's kind of why I was talking about gaming the system. Then I did PE, which again, gaming the system, because part of it was a practical assessment. I was good at football and rugby and stuff like this. So I guess maybe I was always had a psychological element and kind of going into that, which helps you with sales. But yeah, I didn't really have a set idea of what I wanted to do. I just didn't know what I didn't want to do. You know what I mean? And so then I picked media studies, which led to journalism at Sheffield Hallam. And then after 1 year, I actually transferred to America. And then that's kind of where I did part of my story also.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you're kind of saying how you want to game the system. I've always known you as like a really hard worker, right? So you always will get the job done. You'll kind of grind. You'll do whatever you need to do. And it reminds me of that sort of persona of someone who will learn the really complicated way to cheat on a test. Like you're putting in all the work on learning how to cheat on the test. So you're showing your smarts, but it's like kind of a matter of not being confined to following this exact track, doing it this exact way, kind of find the way around it. While still not doing it in the lazy way in a way, because you're working hard.
And it can be like teachers as well, right? You know, it's like if you've got a football manager who's like Jose Mourinho, you know that guy's going to make you run miles and miles and miles down the pitch, right? And then you can have a different type of manager who's a bit more laissez-faire and lets you, you know, express yourself, right? And so depending on the type of play, you might be like, how do I want to go and work for that person? It's going to make me, you know, work my arse off. And I think there was teachers I just avoided because they'd already teach me. It wasn't like I was a bad student per se. There's maybe some, like, as I said, being mischievous for days. So I was just like, hey, I'm gonna take the easiest, the path to least resistance, while still being within something that I have an interest in. That's how I would put it.
For sure. So now touching on traveling to the US and doing the studying abroad, I'm curious how many of your friends and whatnot did the study abroad thing? Was that fairly common, or were you a bit of an outlier in deciding to travel to America?
Total of 0. So it was almost something. In fact, I actually clicked on a Google ad, just enough that started all this. So maybe that was my leading to marketing. I'd already been prayed to a sales pitch. But yeah, what had happened was I was playing football, soccer, at a reasonably good level for the age I was, like amateur. I was playing at like county standard. I'd never had trials, but our school team went to like third in the nationals. I would say 1600 team country, and so we were a pretty decent team regionally and nationally. And then I was going to go to uni in Sheffield. I was trying to actually find a semi-pro team, and I started Googling around. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I must have Googled like maybe something around scholarships or something about semi-professional or trials. And then that Google ad popped up, and then it was like, go study abroad in America. And to apply, I think it was free, or you paid like something like nominal, like $40, £40 or whatever, to play in this trial. And then there would be an agent fee that you'd pay if you got accepted into the program. And so I was the only kid that did it because no one else was searching this. It wasn't like your coaches told you like, hey, there's all these kids going to America who don't do this. And so it was purely just off the cuff and spontaneous. And then I got through these different, like 2 rounds of trials. And everyone there was like, I played at QPR, I played at Arsenal, I scored a winning goal in the the 14 that they got. And I was like, oh, I'm playing with my mates in the street, but equivalent.
No shoes.
But yeah, and so, but I think that was that kind of just, I didn't want anyone to try and take that away from me based on they had some sort of caliber. At the end of the day, I played against good players, sort of knew what my class was, and I had a good couple of the games I got through, and then it all sort of started from there. But it was definitely not, it wasn't something that was widespread, despite there being loads of kids at this trial. I don't think it was something that was common. Maybe at the academies, the kids that got released and maybe had decent enough GCSEs, they would kind of maybe like give them the elbow and be like, hey, you could go and apply to go play university in the MLS, and then you could go that path. So I reckon that is probably how a lot of those kids end up there, and I just stumbled across it, which is why I don't think many of my friends did it. But I think there was probably definitely a few that had the caliber to go and do it, sure.
So that's interesting. That's not at all what I was expecting to hear. Because I knew people like sometimes, let's say people in Europe will be like, oh yeah, I studied in Milan or whatever for 6 months, or I took a semester there, and like the majority of them do that. But this did not seem like the common thing for people in your village to be doing. And not only was it, maybe it sounds like a little bit of a rarity of studying abroad, but it was studying abroad through sport, through a Google ad, which is really interesting. So first off, like how did your friends or your family treat that first time that you were going abroad? Was that relatively, again, rare in your village and whatnot to do something like that?
Yeah, it's, I mean, that like obviously really credit to my parents because they supported me both in terms of like finances to pay the agent fee to go out there to effectively get scholarship offers, supported part of my university fees. So I really all credit to my parents for being understanding, and then also like financially supporting part of it that say the scholarship didn't cover, but I did get a decent ride. And then for my friends, it was like mixed, I guess. Like I think there was a couple where it was all like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Because they were like good enough players probably. But most people were sort of supportive and thought it was interesting. I think the funny thing was when I ended up with 2 offers. One was for Miami and one was Wisconsin. And then obviously ended up going to like Wisconsin. It was like they didn't even know where, like some people generally wouldn't know where Wisconsin was. Like I actually knew because of watching that 70s show, great show. When like other people may, not had such knowledge of Wisconsin prior to that.
When you said that, I was just imagining, I didn't know that 70s show was recorded or was supposed to be based in Wisconsin. But my thought was the TV shows are the things that you know from Miami, like Miami Vice or whatever else. So like you and Rob know Miami, but you just happen to be a guy that watched that 70s show.
Yeah, that's so.
So how was that? How was that landing on the ground in Wisconsin? Anything surprising about that you found surprising about the U.S. that was a little bit different than the movies or whatever?
The first day I arrived was horrendous. It was all self-induced by my own idiocy. Actually, peer pressure as well was a part of play. But like my friend had a free house, as you'd call it back in the day, which is where like parents are out, and he had like a mansion, it was like his own business. And so it was the day before I was going, and I was like adamant I was drinking a lot. And then we just had like a few beers. And then there's this one boy, they all peer pressured me to drink what was like, you ever heard of Pims? And so I had to like drink the whole bottle of Pims in one go. And so then I was just in a bad way, basically. Ended up with like my phone got lost, and it was like phone bills that were outrageous. Was basically nearly sick in the airport, and then my mum and dad are like taking me away, and then I land in Chicago, or I get to Ireland, and then the visa people are harassing me because it's my first time going to America with this F1 visa, whatever it was called. And so yeah, the first 24 hours were not something that were that great. Everything after that was great. When I actually got to Chicago and the family picked me up, the Snows, they were a great family. Tom Snow was the left winger in our football team, and it was actually me and another lad called James Lockley. He'd moved from us. we arrived there, and then we got picked up later by the manager in Wisconsin. But we stayed in Chicago over for one night, and then we just, like went around the mall and did all the kind of things that you were doing in America. And I'd been to the States before. I'd actually done a football tour in California. My parents had took us on holiday there. But like this was like me on my own, in my, what was just probably 19, soon to be turning 20, so kind of what I've been an adult. And yet more like integration with other, it wasn't like I'm a tourist on a holiday, right? It's to stay at families' houses and learning more about, their city and clubs and the hockey team that's popular sports. I can't remember now. So yeah, it was good. It was great. Minus the hangover and all the issues that I brought on myself. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot has changed since then. I mean, I've known you when you've been in your later years, but I mean, that sounds like a typical like 18, 19-year-old sort of
Yeah,
stage to me.
exactly. Yeah, it's not, especially with my friends as well. I was never going to be able to just have a few cans of Fosters and slunk off into the night. But
And then did you go anywhere else? So you were in Wisconsin for a while. Did you travel elsewhere in the US or what?
yeah, so when I was living there, we, especially in the off season, well, for football season, we would actually travel to places to play games because we were in, I can't remember what it was called. It was basically around like Iowa, Michigan, or like the Midwest region in Illinois. And then you play your league games as well as Wisconsin. You play your league games and you play Minnesota, play league games, and you play friendly games that would be arranged either during pre-season or in periods where maybe you didn't have league matches to keep like match fitness or just to contribute to your like overall record. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like how friendlies used to be in the like international football before they created this like League of Football Nations, because people game the system and have like loads of friendlies against like teams that were weaker to like pull their points average up, and you could sort of do the same thing with the collegiate sports that were like not the big, because we were NAIA, which is different from NCAA. NAIA, you can get a lot more foreigners in, whereas NCAA have restrictions on how many foreigners, the way the scholarships are appropriated. So there tends to be in the NAIA, for example, you may go travel to a team in where is it, like Lake Superior or something like this, like really far north. And they had, I think the coach was Brazilian, and so they had like a Brazilian sort of core, like they had Americans, but like a large portion of the team were Brazilian. So yeah, we traveled to loads of different places, and it was interesting. You play these teams, and they would maybe be like a standing manager with a bunch of like Danish and Norwegians, or in our case, it would be Brits. So we had Scottish and English lads and the Welsh lads, and then a couple from some other countries around Europe as well. But yeah, you'd be kind of in the Midwest, and there'd just be like a little block of, people from Norway or it's interesting. Yeah.
So if you had to go back to America, you were forced to go back to America. I'm not saying you didn't have a good time there, but let's say today you had to go back. What area do you think you would actually want to stay? Which area did you kind of enjoy the most?
Well, I never went to Texas, which is now really popular. I did go to Florida, which I liked, and having now lived in Thailand, it dealt with the tropical weather, maybe not the hurricanes or the stuff, but now I could deal with the humidity. I've always really loved California for the climate and the terrain around the different regions from south to north. And I've got lots of friends in Colorado and I live skiing. So I would probably feel like I would end up on the Colorado, California side, but I think Texas could be interesting because it's kind of a big commercial hub for all these different cities. Yeah, I don't think I'd live in the Midwest because the weather is kind of terrible. But it's really lush, the fall season is beautiful, but the winter is just unbearable. -40, it's not for faint.
Right. I mean, I guess you traveled enough to see the differences just because I'm from the East Coast and yeah, it's drastically different. West Coast is drastically different. Rust Belt is drastically different, right? I mean, there's you can kind of find whatever weather and politics or whatever else that you want throughout America. You got different states, different areas. So it sounds like you got to see a lot of that. Now,
You in Baltimore? Was that was it you? What region?
yeah, not too far from Baltimore. So I grew up in between Baltimore and Washington D.C. So even those two are quite different, right? DC and
Yeah,
Baltimore are very, very
I've been
different.
to DC. I've not been to Baltimore. I've been to Philly. Been to Jersey's. I was actually working around the New Jersey, New York region as well. So I have got some East Coast experience. I actually like the East Coast as well. The reason I like the East Coast, it reminds me a little bit of, and it's just like the directness, sometimes the bluntness, something that I actually kind of find it like amusing in some regards. It reminds me of times like how England would be. So I think that was one thing I did appreciate about the East Coast.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, I guess to now segue into Thailand a little bit, since we're both now in Thailand, and I feel like we've both found good success here. I mean, but I think the background is really relevant. The fact that I didn't know this about you. The fact that you had traveled, the fact that you had clicked a Google ad and were like, oh, maybe I'll try this, right? It sounds like you are up for potentially challenging situations, right? Or taking long shots or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious then, if you fast forward into the deciding to move to Thailand, what was the story behind what you were doing right before that? And then what inspired you to make that leap to move to Thailand?
Yeah, so before I moved to Thailand, before effectively I was traveling around Asia, which was like the catalyst, but seeing if I could be employed in Asia, which I was in the States, was I been working at a large reseller of IT technology, and then I'd started working freelance for them and actually planned to go traveling to Asia. And then they said, hey, we've got this big project. We know you're planning to leave, but would you be interested in basically seeing this concept that I put forward right before I resigned? They were like, yeah, we really like this and we want to implement it, but we don't have the people in house to do it. And we're going to have to replace you. And so we're going to have all these the moving piece of the jigsaw. So would you consider doing this for say 6 months? We'd pay you freelance and you just manage the project, as you will, obviously pay you more because it's freelance. And so for me, this was, my friends were all mocking me because I've been talking about going traveling because they'd all done it years before. I kept like putting it off like another year. Like, I'm just going to take this job because it's got a pay rise or it's in a big company. There was always something which I actually don't regret doing now because I think everything fell the way it should, I guess. But they were just mocking me because now I had another reason to push it back. But I think that freelance thing again gave me that, like having to do recruitment, having to do like vendor management, having to do MDF applications and funding. So it gave me all these experiences of things that I hadn't done as much in that role with big companies like O2 and Vodafone, obviously like not CEO levels in a segment of their reseller partner network. So I just did it because of the experience and the finance that it would obviously then bolster anything I wanted to do. So after I completed that project, I did a handful more of freelance work with people around Manchester. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to go now. So I did Vietnam. I had a friend that was living in Thailand, who I think we may have actually even met on cross paths when you were at the for recruitment. And so he was kind of like the foundation somewhat for meeting other people when I arrived there, which I definitely think makes a difference to some people, even though I think Bangkok and Thailand is a really easy place to meet people in general. It's still nice to have someone you happen to actually be from my hometown. And so, yeah, that was the catalyst, I guess, was that I'd been traveling around Asia, really enjoyed the lifestyle, enjoyed the cuisine. And in England as well, I also think it's related to what have you got at home? And so like I have my family, which is still very important to me. It wasn't like I had a house or some like amazing career that I was just taking a sabbatical on or something to that effect. Like I didn't have any real ties. And then the other part of me where I took these risks to go to America, whenever I think with Asia, it's almost like you're like, oh, there's not going to be jobs here for me. And then that's when you start doing research, whether you want to go to Singapore, China, Ho Chi Minh, mainly the big cities, but there tends to be more job opportunities. There is jobs for expats in different sectors now. in certain things, like you could move to Thailand and start doing construction and plumbing or something. So it really relates to what type of industries are protected and so forth, as to how easy it is for you to make that move or make that leap and do that. But fortunately for me, these marketable and protected sectors. So I managed to get a job. Yeah, haven't looked back since.
So the working freelance, it sounds like, how old were you when you changed and made that transition from working full time at that former employer to then working on that project for a while on a freelance basis? How old were you?
Think I was 28, maybe, more like between 27 and 28. So I've been working at other company for 2 years since I was maybe 25, 26, if I remember correctly. Like between turning 26, maybe, or maybe I just turned 26. I think I did the freelance project for nearly a year, maybe 6 to 9 months, and a handful of months doing support for those other contacts I mentioned. So maybe a full year between the age of 28 to 29. And then from 29 to 30 was when I was traveling and then moving back to England to save for more cash to then start my job in Thailand. So basically when I turned 30, it was basically when I just started working out long term. So I
Got it.
was freelance at 28 years old. So I started a very long roundabout.
Yeah, no. That's interesting though. I just wonder whether or not that gave you some additional courage because I don't know about you, but when I was working for a larger consulting firm, then I kind of got used to that stability of the paycheck and like the tax forms and I just everything's just taken care of. It's the standard path, right, that you
Yeah.
take after graduation or whatever. But I think that some people have hesitant to make a leap to being able to work for yourself and freelancing. It sounds like you had a pretty nice transition there because when you're working with an employer that trusts you already, and then you're working freelance for them, then you're probably getting some level of encouragement of like, oh, I can actually make money on a project basis, and the world doesn't fall apart. Did you feel that you built up some confidence there when you started doing some of that freelance stuff?
Yeah, I would say in one way I had confidence because there was almost like no risk associated with it because I knew I was going to go traveling. And so it was just like an extra cash just to do before knew I was definitely going to go, rather than say, right, I'm going to take this project and now I know I have to get 3 projects to last out another 12 months or 18 months, right? So I didn't really have like a run road that I needed to hit, which I think made me, wouldn't say if I had something like that being the scenario, I may have been a bit more apprehensive about making that leap. But it ultimately, after completing the project, it definitely gave me that type of confidence that I feel like I could go and do that. And also, I understand there's other businesses with these types of challenges and being understand how to investigate and start creating cases for doing stuff. It was pretty much like a digital transformation project. And so it gave me more of a deeper understanding or sort of like peeled back the floorboards on commercial aspect, which I think when sometimes you're in marketing, like campaign strategist, coordinator, execution, you're not always so in alignment with the business and the ROI and the investment, what you need to get back on it, because you're sort of doing a piece of the picture rather than the broader picture. And so that's where it was also good. That's what gave me that confidence that, okay, I can actually get a deeper understanding, create an evidence case, communicate that to a business, get buy-in, deliver it, and then have them be happy at the end of it. Ultimately, then also I did more projects with the freelancer who I hired. And so it just sort of shows you that network effect that you can create just sometimes doing that one project and building a portfolio.
Oh, for sure. So you described it as a transformation, and I'm imagining though that with sales, it's like some salespeople might just want to sell something, and they can't really have the down to earth conversation like you have as a leader or as a business owner, or where you're thinking about the cost, where you're thinking about the ROI, where you think right. And so it really sounds like you built up that understanding, the bigger picture view, the business owner or the entrepreneur view. which is, like you said, it's somewhat rare. I think some people do kind of live in their silos, and since you understand that, it's probably easier for you to have some conversations around those areas. Now let's fast forward a little bit more. You had mentioned some areas in some cities that have job opportunities, right? So Ho Chi Minh and some of the other areas in Southeast Asia, Singapore, obviously. What made you decide on Bangkok for not settling? Because I still know that you're not exactly, you don't have some house and family and everything like that right now in Thailand, but you've been here for a few years, right? So
Yeah.
what helped you make that decision?
I think because I'd been traveling through Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand, I lived actually in Vietnam. There's a period where tried to do this sort of like furniture business with like a Dutch guy I met. Didn't really go to plan. It wasn't something that like broke me financially. And I actually did learn some stuff just like with anything, about negotiating procurement in Vietnamese, and building stuff as well. So we're actually doing some construction and things. So wasn't how I saw it going, but that was part of maybe why I didn't want to go back to Vietnam. I was like, right, I need to get away from Vietnam and have a break in Thailand. But I had more friends in Thailand. So there was people that I'd met when I'd been here who lived here, who I'd sort of struck up relationships with. My friend who was moved here had been living here permanently. And then just I love the islands and the accessibility of going to different places around Thailand. And so, yeah, actually just went to Ho Chi Minh this weekend just for a holiday because I'd not been back for a while. So the reason I settled on Bangkok was because of probably the relationship with the friends that I had here, just a preference for Thailand, but probably Vietnam is a close second. And I've not been to Singapore. I've visited places like Bali since, but I think in general for Thailand, for foreigners, it's fairly open, and there's other types of things you could do if you have like capital, potentially buy houses or apartments, rent them out, and that could be part of if you're a real estate person, right? So you could then live here. So there's ways that you could live here that don't always have to just be focused on like a job or employment, but for me, good job opportunity and having a good base of friends here.
Got it. So then how did you land that first job? Because I assume you came in on tourist visa and, you can extend it or whatever else. But the one challenge that does come up for people to be aware of is that you can't do that forever. I mean, some people do this whole hopping across the borders for years or whatever, just going back and forth, trying to extend their visas. But there's a lot of risks that come with that. Whereas if, government policies change or if they don't want to renew you for the sixth time in a row, you're now caught on a border and you can't even come back in, right? So there are some challenges there. So there's a benefit to having a work permit, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, was that one of your motivators? Was it just did you need to get some income at some point? Were you, just wanted to be able to stay here longer? So it's kind of worth going through that path. And how was that transition to you to actually having a longer term job in Thailand?
Yeah, I hadn't really ever considered doing the whole like working under the radar kind of thing. Like I knew other people had work permits here and had decent jobs, human or whatever it be. And so kind of that same vein, whether it be a long shot or whatever, or just that belief that like, hey, I can get a job here, maybe people are doing it. Like, and so, but then I did get a slight in, so I'm not going to say I was completely, there was a slight bit of nepotism. And what's person that worked at Plateau knew a friend of mine and they opened the role. And now other people did also apply for the role and interview for the role, but ultimately I ended up getting it. And so that would be, I guess, one new in and why I did it with a work permit. But I think it all depends on what your skill set is. There's international businesses that exist in Thailand where you could be part of French outfit or outfit in the UK or the USA and you get a job and get a work permit that way. So there's ways you can, if you're overseas now and you work for these big type corporations, you can see what type of presence you have in these other major metropolises across Southeast Asia. or you can go the route I went or other people have went, where you land on the flight and you get your CV out and you start doing interviews, and then you then have to go back to your own country or a different country to get all the embassy stuff processed.
Got it. But you started applying once you were already here. Is that right?
I mean, I was sending applications while I was still moving around when I was in Vietnam, but
Mm.
yeah, I paid then to do interviews here. Yeah, so I flew from Hanoi to Bangkok. I had actually done a couple of interviews in Vietnam as well. I had thought about doing English teaching, but I really just wanted to carry on doing marketing. Like, I didn't want to pivot out of it. I'd already pivoted doing that niche thing, and that's when I got my face from it. So I was like, I'm gonna stick to what I know and what I think I do well. I just wanted to move into more of a commercially focused role, the same way I'd done with the project management, and see was there opportunities like that, rather than say in the past in marketing I've been always doing more like content, campaign management, SEO, content writing, whatever it be. I wanted to continue to move more into the account sales sort of.
Got it. And then when you were, so you got the job and you got a sales position, or I guess it may be more of an account management that turned into more of a sales position or something, right? How was that transition for you? Because remember, we started with the whole sales and journalism and the background of all of that. But had you always anticipated that you were going to move into sales? Because what I kind of got is journalism, sports, marketing, SEO, project management, right? Freelancing. So was this your first, stop into more of a sales position then? And if so, how did you find that transition?
Yeah, it was definitely first role. I mean, I've had some roles in the past where I was doing like lead gen, and there would be some bonuses attached to my abilities to generate leads for the sales team. And so I'd had some commercially incentivized compensation type packages or on target earnings, whatever you'd like to call it in the past, but not to the effect where sales is, where it's a little bit more very much driven about how much value can create from an account potentially. So that was my first experience at doing that and getting people to sign on the dotted line, so to speak. So yeah, that was my first exposure. I mean, like I said, I'd done that freelance project where I was getting a buy-in, but the company was already sort of been soft sold by me when I was internally working for them. And so this is where now you're picking up someone that you've never spoken to, who's just working. You're only just, been at the company for 2 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks. You speak to someone about their website, really only known for 2 minutes, and you've got to create, and it's just the same way with that project, create a use case for why they should make an investment in this, and then using data to get that story and make it compelling, and trying to make the finance understand why it's the investment, on whether that's a short term, medium term, long term kind of goals of the campaign. So that was new to me. I didn't really have any past training, probably wasn't as knowledgeable now as I am now, where I would have been like, I'm going to go read 20 sales books and go watch these podcasts and stuff like that, because it wasn't as readily available as it probably is now in 2023. Like all those materials are on the one TikTok and Instagram or on any kind of post. And so I was very much learning it on my feet rather than from someone else. And some of that could be good, but I do think having more structured learning mechanism is ultimately to get to the goal that you want faster.
Well, yeah, it's interesting though that you made that transition though, and the fact that you'd worked in tech and you worked in marketing and you've worked in some of these other areas, it seems like you had the skills that you needed, but it was just a matter of kind of polishing around the edges, getting that other soft skill of like talking to people and convincing them to take an action. But you had a pretty strong foundation in a lot of these other areas, which is really important. I want to run something past you though. So you had mentioned that you have some friends that worked in recruitment. You had mentioned how in Thailand there are some protected industries. So just for people that don't know, it's some industries you can't be a foreigner working, let's say in a restaurant, I believe, or some sort of food services, because Thailand wants to protect, understandably, their local population to make sure that foreigners aren't taking their jobs, that sort of thing, right? So you'd mentioned teaching. So the summary of the people that I sort of know in this area is that people either go into teaching as like that's the one job that'll always exist, but there's a million people that are worked in other areas, and then they can get a teaching job in Thailand. They've got a little bit stricter about, having people that have university educations, but it is easy to get a teaching job, but it's also understand that it's very low salaries, and teaching is not necessarily a fun job for people that aren't really passionate about it, right? So teaching jobs are a common one. Sales jobs are another really common one. So recruitment and things like this are you can do quite well because, to your point, it's commission based, right? So
Yeah.
you can make a really good salary, and I know some people that have done really well in Thailand making maybe more than they do in their home country, just because if they can sell on the phone, then you can do really well. So there's sales jobs, there's marketing jobs, right? And you can work for marketing agencies that are based in Thailand, or you can do freelance and work as a marketer just from abroad where you're doing that, anything that's sort of remote. Are there any sort of other positions that you have either friends or people that have done really well in Thailand that have worked in some other industries and have found a lot of success beyond those key ones?
Yeah, there was, I remember a French lad at pianos, it's called Thibaut. And I think it was his own company. And it was something, or maybe it was part of something in Thailand as well, but it was to do with manufacturing or some like process within manufacturing. So I think there are even like left field things when you speak to someone and then they tell you it and you're like, what? It's so random. So I think there is, like, it's just like anything in the world. If you've got skill set or expertise to like a really high level, then it's going to be a $50 million or $100 million type company that might need you for a certain role within product development or whatever. So I think there are other industries that I don't have any knowledge about where people's skills could be utilized. But it'd be like, how do you find that job? How do you find that in with that company? How do you even understand if they're developing a product or whatever that you would be a great project leader for us? Like, there's all these other things that you have to consider. And I think the language barrier is definitely a challenge in some of these other sectors where you potentially work with Thai employees as well. So you might have to have a better grasp of Thai to facilitate a good delivery of a project. Whereas obviously what we're doing is pretty much all English driven and with English audience, not local market. But I think there's other things you can always consider as well to like how easy it would be for you to transition to a job there.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The specialization, and yeah, I guess there are always big things. Like, I mean, there's construction where it's some, French and German company or whatever that working together on some big construction project or whatever, and you kind of need someone who's really specialized in, train building or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So people with specialized skills can do really well, but I'd assume that a lot of those are people that those large multinational organizations are probably importing those people in and getting them on an expat salary. Sometimes a little bit harder to say, I have a specialized skill, I'm going to land on the ground and then work in that specialized skill. And that's where I'm just going to go back to what you've done. I mean, you didn't have, again, a purely sales background. The fact that you built up your sales skills, that is, I don't know, I think that's a huge advantage. Anyone who's willing and capable to work in sales, if they're good at it, if they have the skill set after having, polished that or honing that skill set, that still seems like one of the best cheat codes in my opinion, because it allows you to really work across different industries, ideally take advantage of the industry that you worked in the past, and then, work a job that a lot of probably Thai people wouldn't really want to work, to be honest, right? And that actually touches on another thing, is that you work with primarily US clients, right? So there is also a time difference to account for. So how's that work situation for you now? Do you work later nights sometimes? And do you find anything challenging about that current setup, or is it kind of the cost outweigh the benefits?
Yeah, it's definitely this reward, I guess. Like there's some aspects where, I mean, I think in one way it's great for me because it's flexible. I actually like the fact that I could split my day into two half shifts. Sometimes I would find it in the UK, and it wouldn't just be me, you could look around the office, see people eyeing the clock at 4:59 or whatever time it is that is set for that particular business. Or you can just see the people get burnt out by doing that like 8 to 9 hours, like straight slog with maybe a brief integrated between. So for me, it actually helps me keep me sort of rejuvenated as well. The challenge could be that maybe I want to go to a weekday night, it's someone's birthday and they're going out for a dinner, and maybe I've got some important calls I want to take and I didn't have foresight, but then let me know too late or something, and then I can't really move anything around. If I had like a family or something, then I guess it could also, or children, maybe that could impact it. But in general, because I'm working at night from potentially 9:30 till I try and clock off at 1 a.m. at the latest, but depending on the time zone differences throughout the year, that could be a little bit later. And I've just got used to it, and actually enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping business owners understand marketing. I enjoy finding like opportunities and wins that they can have, and then see them eventually hopefully fit to case studies 6 or 12 months later, and knowing that, okay, I didn't do all the campaign execution and see everything through, but I helped get the ball rolling and helped identify some opportunity. And then obviously the great work the rest of the team helped accomplish that for that client. And then that client can ultimately potentially invest in more services or bring us referrals or whatever it be. So I think if I had to stay up and do something that I hated, then obviously I just wouldn't do it. I would go and get a different job. But because I enjoy it, even when sometimes it's not a great lead or whatever, the work comes smooth. It's just part and parcel of the job. It can be challenging, and some people to be like, I don't understand how you can be engaged at that time at night, where it's someone else's morning, right? They've just had their cup of coffee, they've just finished their first meeting, and they're like, right, ready to talk business. And then for me, it's like my last call of the night, like what am I watching Netflix for half an hour before I fall asleep? So, like that's the challenge where we are at our time in the day. And so I think for some people, it's more surprised that I would be able to have these types of conversations at night. I've been up for 7 hours in the day, but it just means that I don't get up at 7 a.m. and do a yoga session at sunrise or whatever, like someone else might do.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and it still sounds like a really good balance, because when you just mentioned maybe staying up for a 1 a.m. call, I mean, as you said, you're probably not going to be super, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at that time, but at the same time, that's still not terribly late, right? I mean, some people do watch Netflix until 1 a.m.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
but you're working during that time, right? And that's totally fair. The other thing that comes to mind here is we've talked a lot about how you built up that skill set in sales. And it seems really powerful that you really like helping the business owner accomplish their end goal, because you're very well-rounded, right? So I do know some salespeople that just have the skill set in sales. And if there's a technical challenge, if there's a marketing challenge, if there's anything else like that, that's out of sight, out of mind for them. They can't handle that. Whereas you've built up that strong foundation in those areas. And so now you can have a well-rounded conversation. Now you actually really want to help them, and you're not just looking to sell something and then move on, because it sounds like you really have a connection to the people that you talk to. You actually care that you're actually helping the people that you talk to, which I'd say comes across very much in a sales call, because you're not just a typical salesperson that just wants to pitch them something, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to get on a call with someone for half an hour, and it's already booked, there's no point not providing any value, even if they're maybe not a good fit or they don't have the budget or something. Like, there's always something you could help them with, like someone yesterday, and they may end up purchasing, but probably not immediately from what it sounded like. She's got to make a case to the business owner. She's kind of getting quotes from people. And then I noticed that like their GMB categories were all set up incorrectly for a managed service provider. So like that's just adding a little bit of value that may help them accomplish their goals in short, medium, long term. Didn't cost me anything, cost them anything to accomplish it, and creates good precedent for maybe when they do want to receive a proposal for me, I've got a little bit more of a competitive edge over someone else. And yes, that was somewhat sales oriented in the back of my mind, right? There was always this ulterior motive, you could say, to bring in more revenue for Toronto, but I was also providing value for nothing at that time. So I think it's like just sowing good seeds, just doing good deeds that will hopefully pay dividends in the future.
Right. And just to unpack that, the acronym GMB, Google My Business,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So
Google My
that's a
Business.
business that, has a map listing on Google Maps, And there are ways that you can optimize that to make sure that you have increased visibility. And when people are searching for that thing, then your listing is there. And that's something that potentially someone can do for free or a business can do for free. It's not a service. But to Adam's point, it's this idea of just doing whatever's right. Like, okay, if you don't have much money, you don't have much budget, that's totally fine. You want to help that individual and you're going to give them some ideas on how to make some improvements. And when you said all that, it reminded me a lot of like a real estate agent, right? So a real estate agent, a good one is probably networking a lot, talking a lot, trying to help people, trying to kind of be their friend, right? But they're not just looking to, can I sell this person this house this month? It might be something that comes around a year later. It could be someone's friend that, right, that needs a house and they think of that person. So you play the long game, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Try and understand where a customer is in their life cycle. And, it's a lot of that's just due to questions and answers. If someone has got an SEO agency and they're doing a bad job, well, then I can go for the jugular and start pointing out all the things that are wrong and then show how our price is more competitive and how they get more value. But then if it's someone else who is not in that frame of mind, and it's like, as I just said, they're kind of more shopping around and they don't really know what they're searching for, then I could do some more like soft sell where I can provide some free value and tips that will have hopefully an impact on them. That 6 months when they're ready, they'll be like, okay, that guy knows what he's talking about. Speak to them.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about work. I'm curious, since you've been here for a few years now, what are the things that you enjoy about Thailand, whether that be through leisure time or whatever? Because it sounds like you really worked out a good way to take late night calls and work hard during those hours, but you still, you're into sports, you're into some other things. So what things do you enjoy in Thailand outside of the work?
And I've always been into sports and athletics. So, I've got one friend that I played tennis with occasionally. I've not played in a while, but like this, you can pretty much do everything in Bangkok or even in Thailand regions, right? So like sports, outdoors. And so for me, the weather, well, obviously it's raining right now. It was rainy, so it was most of the time, but even for a period of today, it was very nice weather. You can always go out and do stuff. In England, that's challenging. In Wisconsin, it was definitely challenging for like 4 months of the year. And so for me, that's why I like Thailand, is that if I want to go and stroll along the beach, if I'm living on that beach and just have a relaxed day, I can go do that. If I want to stroll along sunbed and get pollution in my face, I could go and do that. But if the weather would be nice, it'd be bustling and there's activity going on. I feel like just the climate and the cost of living, the people, the outlook of people's on life, just, it's also really safe. Like I've been as well. I just traveling in Peru, Colombia and South America last year, and that was a great experience. But definitely felt a little bit, less safe than in Thailand or Bangkok even. And even like comparing that to the UK, I feel like Thailand was infinitely safer. You can leave phone in a taxi and someone will go drive 15 kilometers after the end of their shift to give it you and really refuse to take a bar off it until you literally, forced it into their hand. It's like those kind of people there. So that's the reason as well why it's good if you want to be an expat who's single and just want to enjoy your free time, all the way to, you've got a family and you're concerned about safety and other things. It's good in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point that there is a culture here of people are more relaxed, little, which in a way you can stand out if you're a little bit less relaxed and you're really hardworking or work really late hours, whatever. Not to say that there aren't people that do that here too, but I'm just saying you can stand out in that regard. But then you also just have people that are just seem content, just seem happy, like they're gonna, do the street food or they're gonna cook street food all day, or they're gonna, take care of the gardens, and just a lot of people seem content and just they kind of go along and like you said, will go above and beyond sometimes for strangers here, right? I mean, it's maybe not as extreme as in some areas, but the whole you drop something on the ground, a lot of people are going to pick it up and give it to you, right? They're not going to grab it and put it in their pocket. So there's a lot of really kind people here as well. Now, what about your recommendation to anyone who's thinking about coming to Thailand? Do you have any sort of opinions on any misconceptions or any good reasons that you would say to come here? What's your advice to others?
I mean, I wanted to come here because I felt like where I was in the UK, there wasn't like that much for me. Like if I probably wanted to do further on the career ladder, it would be either going completely freelance to do more projects, or maybe moving to London and trying to get like a bigger agency or chief marketing officer type job. A lot of my friends have moved to Australia or living in Dubai or living in Thailand or had kids in a family. And so I was, I've had to gravitate one way or the other. And so that's sort of why I took the leap. But I think there's scenario or situational things that could be why you want to make that leap of faith. And then also just like, your age, like if you're young, just definitely go and do it if you're looking for an opportunity for even a year or two to then even go back to your home country. I moved out here when I was older, but it's easy to do it when you were younger. And so for me, if you're just not totally enamored with where you are in life at home, you don't have to, just start researching. Go and look at podcasts like this or other types of content you can go and view on YouTube, articles, look at businesses that operate here, and see if your skill sets align with them. Decide if it's something for you. I think shouldn't be. You always feel like you can go back home, restart if you ever have to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too, that some people retire and obviously your money can usually go further in Thailand than it would maybe in your home country. But sometimes there's a negative light put on the idea of, oh, you're just going to Thailand, you're just going to sit on the beach and do nothing. And I would argue that you can actually continue your career here as you have done, right? So it seems like what you're doing now in your career wasn't exactly like, oh, I don't like teaching, but I'm teaching there just so I can get enough money to pay rent. It sounds like the skill sets that you are building on are actually part of that career path. So whether or not you go back to the UK at some point in the future or not, it's not exactly like, what have you done for the last few years? Oh, I was just sitting, drinking Muay Thai. It's like you were actually doing work, working late hours and building a skill set, right? So
yeah, and that's it. It can be, as you said, that obviously the point of the podcast is to thrive in Thailand. That there is that aspect of it where at a certain stage in your life and you get the right opportunity, you grab it, the bull by the horns and make it your own. And there could be a point where in life you're still feeling out what you want to do. The experience of being in Thailand makes you go back to your home country and then work your ass off and get the skills to then get the better job later on, or make some capital that allows you to buy a house here and or invest and set up your own little business, like whatever it is, right? Just having something that gives you an exposure to be the catalyst to create that drive to be successful here. When you land here, yes.
yeah, and one thing additional to piggyback off that is money can go very far here, but it can also go very quickly here. So there are plenty of people that save up for, let's say, retirement in the UK or the US and come here and within, months or years, all their money's gone. That can absolutely happen. You can absolutely get rid of your money very quickly. So I think it's a really good, if you have the ability to come here and make money, then you're going to be in a much better position. It's the same with anything, cash flow, right? As long as you have cash flow, then you're going to do okay. So as long as you're not depleting your retirement forever, as long as you're not, there's something's coming in and you're building something here. And it's a little bit harder, I'd argue, for the first couple of months. Like if you don't have that first job, then it's sometimes hard to get that first job because there are a lot of people applying for jobs, right? But once you get that first job and once you've proven, oh yeah, you're going to stick around, you can work hard for a year, you're not just here for holiday, you're actually here to get some income and to do a good job, then it's a little bit easier to get the second job or to, take some parallel move or to move up the corporate ladder in the company if you like the company a lot or whatever. But yeah, sometimes that first move, that first job, that first income can be a little bit tough, but then it can kind of be good from there once you've proven yourself.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I was going to say, my friend, he's new several recruitment jobs in different types of companies, and he's always succeeded. It was that first job, and his initial job was doing more project management, and it was actually like with Netflix. And he made the transition into project management into sales ultimately. And so you said it's about getting your first job, the first visa, the work permit, getting some credibility, and then you network, and you've got all these other things, these opportunities that may present to you just by being present in Bangkok. that you wouldn't get by looking on Indeed, thousands of miles away.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the last questions for you, what are your plans for the future? Adam, you'd mentioned that you had this entrepreneurial side of things. You're starting furniture stuff in Vietnam. But what sort of big plans or ideas do you have for the coming years?
I'd like to have like a side project business, whether that be like digital, whether it's product based, whether that be in 20 years time, I've made enough money and decided I'm just going to have a little cafe on a Samui beach and to bacon butties and do some freelance GMB management. Like I don't really know that far ahead at the moment. I just want to really hone in on building what I'm doing at Pronto in terms of revenue, build the company. And from my own perspective, trying to determine what type of side project I would like to do, whether that be freelance and moving into like a consulting, whether that be a different sales role in a different industry, that should be employed, not freelance. I haven't got anything firm, got some loose irons in the fire. It's probably how I would put it, but nothing. I think for me, it's more determining like where I see myself living. I feel like if I'm going to continue doing remote work, States, Australia, for that side of it, it's more the understanding the visas, like where could I live, where I'd be closer to my family in the future potentially, that would also allow me to have a visa, that would allow me to have own a property that I would live, like all these other aspects. If I wasn't to live in Thailand, then things that are more up in the air for me from like a working standpoint. I feel like the boys would be somewhat involved in marketing digital if the industry exists and is taken over by AI robots. That's where I'm planning to stay.
Awesome. So last thing, what is the best way to get in touch with you? If there's someone from your hometown that's trying to make the move out to Thailand, or if it's someone on maybe the marketing or SEO or sales side of things that wants to reach out to you, what's your best contact?
I should probably get more personal brand stuff like my own domain and all the other things that I know you have. So I would tend to say go for LinkedIn. Message me on LinkedIn. Adam Porteous. Probably should show that I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand. And then, you can always go to Pronto Marketing and fill in contact us for, you'll probably likely end up speaking to me as well. So you can find my LinkedIn profile.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the time, Adam. It's been a pleasure. I learned a lot of things I didn't know after knowing you for a few years. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Well, there you have it. Adam's story shows us the importance of taking bold steps, building a wide-ranging skill set, and the value of forming meaningful professional connections. I hope you learned something, and I'll catch you on the next one.